Our second pattern for the month is the ridge check pattern, and you can see here that our ridge check pattern uses two different colors. So it will be important for you to pick out two different colors this month. I am once again using the Carlton DK, which is not the cotton that I called for in the pattern. I decided to try something a little different. So when we go to do our ridge check pattern, it's important to decide which of our colors is going to be our primary and which will be our secondary. It's not as important in this kind of work, but it does become more important in other color work. So I'm actually going to use the darker, the denim for my primary, and I will use the slate for my secondary, much like I did here. So that navy blue right here, this is my primary for this block, and this is my secondary. And we are going to start once again by reading our chart, and you'll notice that our chart is color coded. So what you'll want to do is make certain that you are following the color coded pattern. You'll work the first 2 rows in your primary and the next 4 rows in your secondary, and on and on. So what does our chart say this time? It says we're going to cast on 33 stitches with color number 501, and we're going to use color number 506 French for the contrasting color. But we can use whatever colors we'd like, just as long as they go together and you can see the contrast. We're going to follow that chart and repeat the stitches between the red lines or the stars 7 times, and then we're going to repeat the chart only rows 3 through 10 5 times, and then we're going to repeat rows 1 and 2 again. So the reason that this one has a slightly different repeat is because we have to set up our work so that we can slip that color stitch. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to slip the stitch. It would get really tight. So we have to make sure that we've done a couple of rows of that stockinette stitch in the color that we want to be on top of our secondary color. So you can see how that primary color comes up and crosses over that secondary color. And that's because we did those 2 rows in stockinette to start, and then we started slipping those stitches. So when you look at your chart, it's important to note where your color change happens and which row your slip stitches happen on as well. I go ahead and I just carry the yarn that I am not using up the side of my block, and you can see a little bit of that right here. There'll be an extra ridge of color where I have carried the lighter blue over the darker blue, and then the darker blue over the lighter blue, and then the lighter blue over the darker blue, etc. up the side of my block. And it doesn't add that much weight or problem to that selvage on that side. So I would recommend that you go ahead and just carry your yarn up the side of the block. I find that it can be helpful if I twist one color around the other color. So if I just move them around so that there's a twist in them every other row. So on all of my right side rows, I twist my color in because we have 4 rows where we are stranding it otherwise. So I like to make sure that I twist my yarns around each other and then continue on with the color I'm supposed to be using in that row. So for example, if I was knitting with the slate, then I was on row 3, I would twist the dark denim around the slate and then let it hang and then continue with my slate across my row. And all it does is it helps to make that selvage just a little bit tidier when you are working. I'm going to go ahead and cast on my 33 stitches and work rows 1 through 10 so I can show you what it should look like. Now that I have worked through the first 10 rows of our chart, you can really start to see how those slip stitches affect the striping and how we have that slip stitch that carries up. Now, I don't have high contrast between the 2 colors that I chose to use on this square to show you today how this works. So for your squares, you may want to choose something that has higher contrast so that you can really see that color play. It's really up to you though. If you like that subtle color, you can go ahead and use the subtle color. But personally, I would use something that had higher contrast in my blanket. So now that we have worked with our slip stitches for the ridge check pattern and the checkered basket stitch, we've advanced our knitting knowledge just a little bit more. I hope that you've enjoyed this month's squares, and I will see you in July for our next squares.